I simply looked around and thought, has anybody noticed? Can I just do one? Can I just disappear, blame it on someone else? And then Martin comes strolling through to the side door, and in his brilliantly deadpan voice, as I'm sort of furtively looking about, says, what have you done to my boat? And I'm like, oh no!
What particular accent is that meant to be?
That is a Finnish accent.
Of course it is.
Welcome to episode number 5 of Boat Nuts, a weekly podcast all about things boaty. Now, Boat Nut number 1 is Hugo Andreae, editor of Boat Yachting magazine. I'm Alex Smith, Boat Nut number 2, deputy editor of that same title. And the basic principle is we come down to a place, jump on board a specific boat for a chat about boating things. What kind of boat are we on this week, Hugo?
Well, this week we are on a Sunseeker Sport Yacht 75.
Like last week?
Yeah,
And the week
and possibly even the one before. But we have a different angle, looking very beautiful in the sun here at Swanwick Marina, and still available for anybody who's interested for just over £4 million ex-VAT from Sunseeker Southampton, just down the dock there.
Well, I'm not unhappy to be on the Sunseeker again. I quite like it. And I quite like the fact we got some juicy stuff to chat about today. Now, as ever, we're going to run through a boat, a product and an issue. The boat for today is the epic day boat that is the flagship Galeon 435 GTI. We saw that in Dusseldorf. It's an extraordinary thing.
Strange, but good.
Strange but good, yeah. You could say that about several Galeons actually, couldn't you?
Say that about us, maybe.
Yeah, well.
Strange, anyway.
Products.
Yep.
You could definitely say it about those. Alternatives to deck shoes, because I hate deck shoes and I'm looking for a good looking alternative, something I can actually wear without being embarrassed by it. You love a deck shoe.
We're
so
boat
we're going
guys,
to argue
we
about
can
that.
wear
I know.
deck shoes, but we can talk about it.
I refuse. And our issue actually is more of a confessional this week, isn't it? It's like we've got to get something off our chest.
Yeah, I'm only quite looking forward to this.
It's going to be about our worst boating mistakes.
It's going to be hard, it's going to be painful,
Yeah.
but hopefully it will be cathartic.
Cathartic. Well, let's go downstairs and treat ourselves to a bit of joint therapy, shall we?
Let's do that thing.
Brilliant. Our first topic then is a boat, and this week it's the Galeon 435 GTI. Now, the 435 is the largest dedicated dayboat Galeon builds, and we've seen the GTO, the outboard version. The
Yep.
GTI is the inboard version, and we saw that in Dusseldorf. And I don't think you saw it in the flesh, but
I haven't had a
impressed.
really close look at it, but I know you've been quite a fan. You've tested one of the GTO, haven't you? And now you've
tested the GTO?
you've tested one of them.
I have tested
maybe
one.
the
I think it was the
GTO.
smaller one, yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
okay.
But I want to talk about this boat a bit more, because I know we covered it in our first podcast where we talked about our favourite boats from Dusseldorf. But I feel like Galeon, it does so much with its design. Sometimes it goes a bit wrong. In terms of the running attitude, sometimes there's too much weight aft, as you know, it can run a bit bow up. And sometimes an idea that looks amazing on the draftsman's board gets transferred onto the water and you think, it's just not quite there. But Galeon has the minerals, the staff, the investment, the attitude that enables it to really push forward with design ingenuity to do things first. So I feel like Galeon deserves recognition and credit for that, in the same way that Axopar has had recognition and credit for that, by just making other boat builders, other designers work a bit harder.
100%. And
Yeah.
so many people have copied them. They were pretty much the first to start putting folding platforms
Yeah.
on flybridge boats. They were one of the first to have those sort of sliding side doors, effectively.
That's right, and furniture that
And
folded out
furniture
into
folded
that
out,
space.
so you suddenly create a kind of bar out
Yeah,
to the side of the
exactly.
boat.
Yeah.
They had those rotating seats at the back.
That was complex
They've
too
had
to
all
generate.
kinds
wasn't it?
of clever things,
Yeah.
and I totally agree. They've just pushed people to think harder, do better, be more creative, and they've built some really cracking boats out of it too.
They have. They really have. I recently tested the 560 Fly, I think it was, and I tested the 480 prior to that. Wasn't such a fan of that boat. Some of those ideas, like I said, didn't quite transfer onto the water. It felt a bit compromised in some ways. 560, absolutely brilliant. Well, this boat,
Astonishingly big volume as well.
yeah, astonishing,
Unbelievable.
and
The
so
amount
well
of
used.
glass on that
Yeah.
boat.
Well, look, talking of volume, 435 GTI. Now look here, this is quite some day boat. I know there's all kinds of modern day boats, sort of Nordic style things with the vertical stem and the tapered bow and the walk around decks and the central furniture that look super cool with the outboard engines and the hard tops, you know, and the deck lights and the underwater lighting.
And they go well.
They go well.
Pretty good value.
But take a look at this boat. I mean, what is it? A 44 foot 10 inch boat with a 13 foot 6 inch.
44 feet.
Yeah.
It's a big boat.
It is. It's got the best part of 14 foot in the beam. And that doesn't sound like a huge amount because it's around about 30%, which is generous for a monohull, but not huge. Well, the way they've designed it, that beam doesn't stop. It just doesn't stop. It goes and it goes and it goes all the way to the bow where you get a kind of slightly angular flared diamond shape. So there's no tapering.
Shovel nosed, I like to call it.
This sounds less beautiful, doesn't it, that way? But it generates such astonishing internal volume. And as you know, on some of their cruise boats as well as their day boats, you've seen that function before. Instead of the hull tapering on the sides, you have it's kind of almost like a moulded terrace on the side, don't you? Yeah. That just deepens the footprint in that foredeck.
But only above the waterline, presumably, so you're not trying to shove a brick through the water.
You're not, but at the same time, if you were to take that sort of boat into particularly wild seas, I'd be interested to see how it felt when that actually interacted with the water shapes. But that aside, what we had here in the Galeon 435 GTI was a boat we knew was very good because we'd, as you say, seen the GTO. Yeah. But the first and most obvious difference, of course, is the fact that you trade those outboards for the inboards.
Or IPS, aren't they? Is that right?
Well, yes, a pair of IPS 650s.
Now, we probably ought to explain very briefly to listeners who aren't aware of the difference between an IPS 650 or IPS engine and a shaft drive or a stern drive.
Well, let me tell you for a start, and I don't like the way that Volvo Penta does this with its IPS range, but an IPS 650, it's not 650 horsepower, is it?
No.
It's 480.
480, I think.
Is it?
Yeah.
Because what they're saying is it creates the equivalent of a 650.
Yeah, because it uses pod drives rather than shafts, and because pods are a more aerodynamic, aquadynamic shape, they create less drag. And therefore, they say that the equivalent, the 480 horsepower, is the equivalent of a 650 horsepower shaft drive boat.
Exactly. So, and they operate in cleaner water as well, don't they? So it's.
But it does work. They are quicker in terms of performance and quieter usually.
Yeah, I'm a big fan. But the point here is that that at a stroke makes it cheaper. Weirdly, because the outboard options where you can have triple 400s, quadruple 400s or triple 600s around about 46 knots. That's a quick boat. It's an expensive boat, but apparently you can save between 50 and 130 grand on this boat, which is about 600 grand all in. So it's a sizable proportion by opting for the inboard version, the GTI, with the twin IPS 650s.
And your diesel too, so you're burning a whole load less.
A whole load less. And get around about 38 knots, which for most people on a day like that is plenty, isn't it? Now, but it doesn't end there, of course, because you've eradicated all those engines from the transom. So all of a sudden, you got a couple of ladders on either side of the swim platform, and like I say, it's a big beam. So you can continue to use those ladders while actually popping a little tender or PW in the centre. And let's face it, if you can't do that, and you can't on the GTO, it kind of impoverishes your day out on a dedicated day boat. You want that capacity, don't you?
Yeah, but there's still some. I mean, I'm a little bit of an outboard man at heart, and certainly I think in the States, isn't that a bit of a status symbol to have your 3 600 horsepower V12 Mercuries hanging off the back?
Undoubtedly, a nice big gallery of numbers just adorning the transom.
And it does look cool, you know.
It does look cool.
3 V12 600 horsepower engines.
Yeah,
that is quite.
We've already touched on the fact that because Galeon is so clever with its kit, because a lot of that kit is heavy and a lot of it's in the aft cockpit, they can run a bit bow up, right? When you've got 1.5 tons of outboards on your transom, it doesn't help. When you eradicate all of that, shift the engines down and forward, pop them deep inside the hull, right in the base there.
And I have noticed that on sports boats. I'm so used to driving outboard power sport boats now, because that seems to be where the market has gone. And then you get in a good stern driven one and you go, oh, that feels quite special, because all the weight is low and central and further forward, and it's just tends to be a better balanced hull, and all that centre of gravity down makes sure that it just handles so much better.
Unbelievably true. Only once in my 20-year career of testing boats have I ever failed to actually note down any performance figures. And that was on a boat so unspeakably amazing that I was having too much fun to do anything with my notebook.
What was this unspeakably amazing boat?
You wouldn't believe it. It was a Glastron.
No.
Yeah, for real. It was a Glastron with an inboard engine, a stern drive. It was in really rough seas. There were a few cruisers about, some smaller, supposedly quicker boats. Everyone was pooting along, just messing with the troughs at sort of 16, 18 knots, getting wet and uncomfortable. We were scooting across the crest at about 44 knots. Absolutely. I was having a blinding time. What a boat.
Yeah.
So anyway,
okay.
that's a bit of a segue, but
Right,
yes. Yeah.
But it does
deep
help.
down and further forward.
Yeah.
Love that. And of course, when you get into the cockpit, you've got that Gemma's beam already, but we got terraces. And I'm not talking your average little postage stamp terraces that just sort of play with it. These are massive. I mean, they give you an extra 6 foot of beam. Takes the overall beam now up to about 43% of the overall length. And that's proper Power Cat territory, that, isn't it? And
you use them for things, or is it just...
Well, quite often you can't, but on this occasion you actually can. For a start, there are 3 glass panels inset into these, so that when they're in the up position, you can see the water at the horizon if you low down. When they're in the down position, you're standing on top of the water, seeing the water through it.
There's something quite cool about
It
that, isn't
is
there?
cool. And they've also got side gates built into them. And you think, well, it's a bit sketchy if I step on that when it's down. Completely rigid, lovely and solid, really good system. So you've got side gates on both sides, even when the terraces are up. And because they're so unbelievably long as well as wide, even though there are no side decks on this boat, because obviously they want to use the entire beam for internal saloon, when they're folded down, you can walk outside of the superstructure forward, so I can basically tap the skipper on the shoulder at the helm
From outside of the
from
boat.
outside of the boat at the
That's
front
quite
end.
cool.
Yeah, and the same on the other side where there's a little permanent stool mounted into the front of the galley on the port side of the saloon.
Yeah.
Well, you can just walk to the front of that and have a casual chat with the bloke sitting on the stool in the. It's just brilliant.
Kids are also going to love it, aren't they? What's more fun than jumping off a boat and having basically a platform, a giant diving platform on either side of the boat?
All day long, and it's particularly brilliant because, of course, if you've got that tender that you can have on this boat loaded onto that aft platform, when you come to anchor, you're going to pop that tender off, walk it around the side, tie it up to one of your platforms at the front. You've got the whole back end wide open, a kind of orbit of decking, and it's completely yours to enjoy. So that is superb. But that's not even the best part of it, Hugo. Honestly.
You're getting slightly scarily excited by
I know.
this now.
Could you tell us if I get one of those sort of weird white gungy bits that just
Oh,
appears
no,
in the
stop
corner
it
of your
already.
mouth? You know, when you
No.
talk endlessly and never shut up. So you got the saloon, brilliant. Okay, really broad, nice big dinette
Saloon
on
because
the
it's
starboard side.
totally covered?
Well,
It's not just a hard top?
it is totally covered, but both windows on both sides slot down into the mouldings all the way down. So
Electric
that opens
side
the
windows.
entire thing right up again. And again, what's on the other side of those if you're in the saloon?
Your big
Your
terraces.
side decks, yeah. I sort of call them side decks because it feels like they
Okay,
are. They're
yeah,
terraces,
yeah.
you're exactly right. But of course, because you don't have side decks, access to that bow, and what a bow that is.
So you walk through
the saloon.
because you've got a full beam.
That's
hardtop.
exactly
Got
it. And
Okay.
there's a 3-man helm ahead of the starboard dinette. And incidentally, you can lift the backrest for the forward bench of that starboard dinette back. And as you do so, the seat raises up. So behind the 3 helm seats, you've got 3 more forward-facing seats that are elevated just above the level of those forward seats.
Nice.
So everyone, a gallery of 6 people
Also, it's
facing
like a sort of
forward.
stadium
it's
seating.
so good. And there's even a kind of base built in beneath those 3 helm seats that's perfectly angled in that elevated position to brace your
Nice.
feet. So it's just bang on. But if we
To
walk
break
to
your feet or brace them?
to brace your
Oh,
feet,
brace,
hopefully not to break them. As you move on towards the port side and forward through a kind of, it's almost like one of those full beam pilot houses where they entirely close the thing off. So it's got a roof structure that can hinge down, I think. Was it up? It gets out of the way anyway. You've got the door structure. So one way or another, if you want the bow closed off, you're in the saloon and you're underway and you don't want the wind, it's all blocked off. But
So
you
a two-part door.
yeah, with its own individual sunroof above that as well. But if you move forward on the port side, really high bulwarks, really safe, so you'd happily send your kids forward. And you're greeted by, it's basically a rectangular bow. It's massive.
So rather than a
Hugo.
little triangle where you can just about room for 2 people
You
to
just
squeeze
can't
in.
believe it. It's just wraps in a sea right around. It's huge and long. It's wider than it is long, actually. And you could easily, I promise you, seat 10 to 12 people up in that bow.
In the bow?
In the bow. And there's also
what is effectively a big bow rider.
Yeah, really big. It's like 2 bow riders rolled into one. It's astonishing. What a feature that is. And you've got the table, so you can use it for lunch. You've got the storage underneath. And you can sink those tables into the space, use your infills. And you've got just a sun pad forward of the most epic proportions. It's ridiculous.
Is that just for sunbathing, or is it some ulterior purpose of having a vast cushioned... It's like a trampoline.
I don't have a lot of mates. If I went up there, I'd just be rolling around on my own, but I'd be glorying in my bow lounge, like rolling in cash. It's just brilliant. It's what a place. It's so impressive.
You just have a giant ball pit, fill it with lots of little plastic balls.
It's like that. There's almost nothing you can't do with it. It's just brilliant. And then you think, you're walking back into the saloon where you've got the stool at the leading edge of that galley. You think, this is great. Every zone of this boat works really hard. And then you pop downstairs. And you think, well, actually, I wouldn't mind a little cruise on this boat either. You know, it's really impressive.
There's enough space. What have you got down below?
Well, you've got it's not a galley on the port side. Down in the atrium on the port side, you've got, I'd say, a breakfast bar. It doesn't have a stove, but it has a microwave and a fridge. And
is there a galley upstairs?
Yes, on the port side, and it's particularly well built, good size, good work surface, all the bits and bobs you want, and there's plenty of options, of course. So this breakfast bar downstairs means you don't have to head up. If you're in bed having a lazy one, you just sort yourself out. And that, quite usefully, is part of a zone that separates the forward and the midships cabins, because you've got the bathroom on the starboard side with separate shower. You've got the breakfast bar there. And what else is good? You know, you've got windows for the breakfast bar. You'd expect that, but you're sunken down. So what they've done is put windows into the bulwarks. So from down there, you don't lose the horizon. You can see properly. You can see the.
So you've got
the
one window out onto the side deck and another in the bulwark, so you can see
exactly
through.
So. Yeah. Really hard working stuff. Then you've got your bow cabin, perfectly sensible sort of space for a decent long weekend or a little cruise. And amidships, you've got a cabin big enough for a double and a single with decent space for storage.
You know what I'm going to say, though?
Go on.
It's just not a very pretty looking thing, is it?
No.
You tried really hard to come up with something a little bit more...
Well, no, look, I mean, there's only so much you can do with styling when you've got proportions on a boat like that.
Yeah.
And, you know, we see this all over the place, don't we? We see it we talked about power cats before now.
Yeah.
Quite often they struggle a bit because of the sheer bulk, the sheer volume. You see it on our tri-deck yachts where you've got tremendous elevation. You just think, oh, wow.
And that seems to be where it's going. People just want space on board.
They do.
But it does mean that the view's rather better looking from the inside out than from the outside in.
Yeah. And that's the way we should all shop, isn't it? You know, have that brilliant boat that looks a bit shit, live in that brilliant house that, you know, looks a bit shit.
Shouldn't you be able to have both?
Well, I don't see how it's really possible. I think they've done a pretty good job with the aesthetic, actually. I mean, it's easy to criticise because any beam forward monohull feels a touch ungainly. You were particularly unkind about the IATA for the very same reason. Great boat.
Well, again, it's another of those shovel-nose boats, isn't it? And
yeah.
It's a bit like, you know, God only designed one duck-billed platypus.
Well, he did, but there's another amphibian that's particularly beautiful, and that's a toad. You see my point? No, look, if
they just look
function
a bit,
can sometimes ruin an aesthetic. We know that, but if you can just divorce yourself a touch from the aesthetic,
I can.
And we should be able to, because Galeon's also tried pretty hard with the playfulness of the boat. You go down into those cabins, there's curves in the cabinetry where there needn't be.
Yeah.
You know, the bed heads are like little art installations. It's pretty. The lighting all over the boat, you know, in all sorts of colours, just to make it feel like the party platform. It so clearly is.
And they do build it very nicely.
Very nicely. And as long as you don't step on all pompous and haughty, looking down your nose,
what are you suggesting,
because it isn't, you know, a core mate or something equally delicious, then you have to concede, even in a world full of lovely sort of tapered Mediterranean style day boats. This, at its size bracket, is about as good as a day boat gets.
Not cheap though.
Well, 600 grand. excluding VAT.
I suppose it is a 44-foot boat.
Yeah.
But still, that feels like a lot of money for a day boat.
Honestly, I've lost sight and perspective as regards money in relation to boats. Everything seems to cost a great deal of money.
Yeah.
And I look at it and think, even I sometimes say this in my videos, and this retails at €600,000 excluding VAT, which seems to me to be excellent value for money. And then I'm on my way home with the car and I think, what the hell are you talking about? But you know what the broader market is like.
I do. But you're right. There's nearly always some level of compromise, and it's where you take that compromise. Is it in the aesthetics? Is it in the volume? Is it in the build quality? Is it in the handling? It's kind of hard. You can't really get a boat that is absolutely brilliant at everything.
No, it's an impossibility. It's all a compromise, isn't it?
Yeah, and ultimately, the market drives that. And if people want space and volume and comfort and luxury over performance and handling and seaworthiness, so be it.
And we're not necessarily saying that the Galeon lacks any of those things, because we haven't actually.
No, that's very true. For all I know, it might be utterly brilliant. But generally speaking, there is usually a little bit of a trade-off somewhere.
Absolutely, there is. But until we get out on the water, I'm going to say brilliant boat. Hope people love it. I love it, and well done, Galeon.
Yeah, absolutely. And as we said right at the beginning, good on them for pushing the boundaries, doing something different, and daring others to follow suit,
they do
which
a great
they
job.
nearly always do.
They do. So next up, we are going to talk about deck shoes.
Yeah, well, straight away we're into the aesthetics already here.
We are, yeah. Well, this is exactly right. We talked about duck-billed platypus and a toad. You know why they're ugly? It's because they're designed to operate in two theatres of operation. You've seen amphibious boats.
What is the toad theatre of operation?
It's on land, it's on lily pads, it's in the water, it's everywhere. It's up walls, you just name it.
Perfectly designed.
Yeah, well, which means imperfectly looking.
Yeah.
Because you know as well as I do, an amphibious boat, an amphibious car, anything designed to operate in two realms tends to be a bit compromised in both, and it tends to look like hell. Okay? That's what a deck shoe is. Okay? It's an amphibious shoe, essentially, isn't it?
I cannot agree with you there. You see, straight away, for me, the deck shoe is one of those things they got right the first time round, and now people are desperately looking for some kind of alternative because it's no longer trendy. We've got it. It found it. It's the best type of boat shoe is a deck shoe. It's comfortable. It breathes. It doesn't matter if it gets wet. It dries very quickly. Easy to put on and off. And there are some are slightly more stylish than the other, but personally, I can go with that, and I feel that's me. I can live with that.
I can't go with it.
Why are you so traumatised by
Well,
a deck shoe?
because they made me wear some in the Navy, and without socks, and it turned my toes nicotine yellow, and I felt like a tool.
That does happen, isn't it? The dye comes out of the shoe.
How's that a good thing?
I don't know. It's not. I mean, the dye doesn't normally come out of things. Why does it always come out of a shoe, but not out of a shirt or a pair of trousers? Or
I guess because you don't wear them into seawater and then back out. I don't know.
There is that. That could have something to do with it.
I don't know. So look, I mean, I know you love deck shoes, but I think they look like Cornish pasties. And
Well,
I
I
don't
brought
like...
a little selection of shoes here.
Show us your old shoes. Where's your
All
old
right,
shoes?
so
Show
that
me them.
to me
Cornish
is a classic, old, well-loved deck shoe. That is a Sebago from probably about 10 years ago. Sebago, I believe, were the originators of the dockside deck shoe. Really comfortable. It's like an old friend. You put it on your foot and it's just like putting it into a nice little snug beanbag or something. But it's just enough support so you can walk around in it. It did have good grips. To be fair, it's so old now, it's gone a little bit dry and scratchy. But all that little siping helps the water flow away.
Yeah, it's good stuff. Lots
Very
of traction.
breathable,
Yeah.
very comfortable. Yeah. It's an old friend. It's a classic.
I risk offending most of our readership and most of our viewers, and definitely you, but I don't like deck shoes because of the way they make me feel about myself. I like to think I'm edgier and more dynamic than that.
Right. Okay. So, I mean, I've brought along a few other options here. Are you a trainer kind of guy? So that is a Helly Hansen, relatively modern. It's a Skagen race series. It's all the latest tech. So it's sort of strange, sort of porous netting type material that water flows in and out.
Have you tried a few of these kind of drained netting shoes?
I've tried a few of them, but I don't really like it. I feel like it wants to resist a bit of water. So if you
Yeah.
accidentally step in a bit of a puddle on
Yeah.
the flybridge
It's
or
straight in
whatever-
there, isn't it?
Yeah, it's straight in there.
Yeah.
And then I have cold feet for the rest of the day. So unless you're in somewhere really hot, like the Mediterranean, I'm not convinced.
No.
And I'm just not really a trainer kind of guy.
Yeah, because the water flows in and out, you need to wear bare feet with them. You can't have
Yeah,
socks with those
yeah,
puppies.
no, there's no point
And
wearing
you
a
have
sock
bare
with that.
feet with that mesh, and it rubs on your feet and it hurts.
Yeah, I mean, they are comfortable and they're very light, to be fair. I do like a light shoe. But I've got some other options. So this is a new company called Equipment de Vie, which already sounds like it's slightly exotic. But
I'm
it's
guessing
a
they're
new,
French.
They
They're
are,
just making
I
it up there
believe.
from Hull.
I believe. Well, it could be.
Yeah.
But to me, that's just all a bit too structured, a bit too heavy. I think it's primarily a kind of sailing shoe, and you can climb up masts and things if you want to do that kind of thing. Slightly fancy sort of, I don't know, it looks like a sort of 3D chart, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does rather.
Load of money, though. It's about 150 quid. I mean, nice enough. Would you be seen wearing something like that?
No.
So what is the answer? I mean, I feel that you're a extra tough kind of guy. So now this is like a little fishing welly.
You know, I could maybe go with that, Hugo, actually. I mean, I'd guess you'd sweat a bit in there, but that'd look all right with a pair of jeans, wouldn't it?
Probably a bit warm, but properly waterproof. You see, that is the kind of thing I would wear on a rib in a winter's day. Properly waterproof up to your ankles, not so tall that it sort of feel like you're wearing a Wellington boot.
Yeah, no, it feels like a kind
Neoprene
of...
lined.
Yeah, it feels like a wetsuit boot or something.
Yeah, a little bit like that. But proper grippy soles on it.
Yeah, that's all right. You know, part of my problem with deck shoes is the fact that it kind of... I know I'm not a yachty. I do a bit of powerboating. I write about boats, but I'm not a yachty. I don't want to be marked out as a yachty. And I feel like a deck shoe is on a par with crimson trousers and draping your jumper over your shoulders to pop to the yacht club. It's just not my vibe, and I can't bring myself to do it. And like I say, I've been in the industry for 20 years, and I still can't bring myself to do it. So I'm waiting for somebody to generate something that I will love. And actually, Dubry, can't be Dubry,
No, Dubarry, I
isn't
reckon.
it?
Yeah.
You can't call a company Dubry, can you? Doesn't make any sense at all. Dubry, they sent me a set of boots. You know, they're classic sort of sailing
Seriously
leather
expensive
boots.
leather.
Yeah. Oh, they were nice. They were comfortable.
Are they worth all that money? Because they are
The best
proper
part, I
expensive.
think they were about the best part 300 quid even at the time. It
Yeah.
was a while back. But I need to get over myself. I just felt like there was some kind of weird elitist horsey vibes going on. You know what I mean?
I kind of know what you mean. Yeah,
Yeah.
you do see a bit of that. But to me, you see, classic deck shoe. This is from Chatham Marine.
Yeah,
these
that's
are specialised boat show shoes because slip on, no laces. When you're looking around a boat show, on and off boats the whole time, constantly taking your shoes on and off. Even today, I've seen you putting on your shoes. It takes you 10 minutes to do your laces and take them off every time.
Yeah,
This,
but they're
straight
Stan
on,
Smiths. They're a
straight
pair of
off.
Stan Smiths, Adidas. They're lovely.
Yeah, comfortable,
Quality
but
shoe.
hopelessly impractical.
It is really impractical, but you know, a lot of these boat shows, you get over shoes anyway, so you look ridiculous regardless, don't
yeah,
you?
I can't be doing with that.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what, I've sidestepped the marine industry in a way. I have a habit of doing this and going to work looking inappropriate, but I like Havaiana flip-flops. What do you think of those?
You cannot wear a flip-flop on a boat.
Well, you can just kick them off and
Breaks
jump on with your
all
bare
the
feet.
rules. You
Well, it
end
does a
up
bit,
with
yeah.
more stub toes than God knows what.
I know.
but-
Plus, actually, a flip-flop does make your foot a bit manky. So by the time you step onto a boat, you've got dirty feet.
Yeah.
People don't appreciate it. And the other one, look, Van Classics slip-on trainers. I tried those at the latest Cannes Yachting Festival.
Any good?
No.
What you did mention earlier on is a croc.
Yeah, I'm not wearing
have-
those out of the bloody house, am I?
Oh no, I've occasionally been known to wear one of those on a boat.
Well, I think they actually do a marine-specific croc, don't they?
I think they do. I'm not sure I've got one, but I've come round to them. I mean, again, that is very much function over form, I think it's fair to say. But
It
they
is.
are unbelievably comfortable and they drain very easily.
Yeah, they certainly
If
do.
you do get them wet, just not a problem.
Yeah, well, I'm afraid I'm left cold by literally all forms.
So you're still
of
searching for the
marine
perfect shoe?
footwear. Yeah, and it's a challenge to anyone out there. Please point me in the direction of a deck shoe alternative that I'll be content to wear, that doesn't make me feel like a yachty or a very old man. and that is actually functional and comfortable, and it doesn't have laces, so I can slip it on and off at a boat show. That's all I want, and it needs to be less than £12. Simple, isn't it?
Surely the middle aisle of Lidl. I mean, it's bound to have them, isn't it?
Yeah, they've got everything.
Everything there is for
just
under
amazing.
£12.
You get a powerboat in there, Lidl special, if you go at the right time of the year. So what we're going to do
Oh no.
is move on to the bit that we've both been really scared about. This is probably why we spoke about shoes for so very long. Should we chat about shoes again?
Delay the inevitable.
We're going to talk about our biggest boating mistakes. And while I work out which of the things I've written down I'm happy to broadcast to the world, you tell me one of yours.
All right. Well, again, I've got several to choose from, but I think the first and probably most painful and embarrassing is that I come from a boating family, and my grandfather bought a boat in 1947. It was a lovely open wooden launch. It was actually just the tender to his boat, but when he passed away in 1976, all his boats sold, but we hung on to this one classic boat, and she's a 22-foot open launch made by Frank Curtis in Looe in Cornwall.
Oh, lovely.
Still part of the family, use it every year. It's just our knockabout boat, but when you think about it, it's actually a proper classic. It is now, 70 plus years old. It's the pride and joy. We've always had it, always used it. And for my sins, I was put in charge of launching this boat. So it used to come out.
I don't like where this is going.
No, well, yeah, I'm afraid it's all that and more. But it came out in the winter every at the end of the season, take it ashore, lived in a shed on this sort of rickety old trailer. We had a pair of train tracks and an old sort of sledge that it came up on, tucked away for the winter. And then in the springtime, we would gradually launch it back and set her up for the season. And I was assumed that, I knew about boats. I wasn't actually working in the boating world at the time, but I did have some idea. I'd had a boat myself for years, and I was put in charge of launching this dear old Isabel. So launched it down the slipway, goes into the water, bobs off nicely. Go, excellent, that's all gone remarkably smoothly. Trailer comes back out the water, take the boat to the end of the pier, tie it up, put some fenders out, all looking pucker. I feel like job done. Go and have a cup of tea, congratulate myself on a job well done. Come back 10 minutes later, sunk to the bottom. Sitting on the bottom, water lapping above the engine bay, because what nobody had told me was that over winter on a wooden boat, all the planks dry out, they shrink, gaps appear in between all the planks, and because it was all below the deck line was just above water level, I didn't see the fact that the moment we hit the water, there was water pouring in under the deck boards. By the time I come back to it, 10 minutes later, sitting on the bottom, water lapping over the engine, game over, dead. Had to call in boat yard next door with a sort of proper commercial pump just to pump the thing out fast enough to stop it coming in.
So you've got to wet the boards for them.
So you've got to wet the boards first. You've either got to lure it in and keep it on the trailer and let the boards take up, or literally fill the boat up with water from the inside out, not above the level of the engine, but enough for a day or two for the water to take up into those boards, the gaps close up, and it becomes watertight again. But for my sins, I sank the family classic boat and killed the engine.
Well, that's
not
pretty good. That is pretty good. But I do notice you blame the rest of your family for not telling you what you should have done.
Of course, it's not my fault. No. I should have known. I should have asked someone older and more experienced in these things, and I foolishly went ahead and did it. And I'm pleased to say we have still got the boat. It is very much afloat. It has a lovely new Yanmar diesel engine in it, and it is still going strong 70-something years later. No, well, amazingly, I'm still in charge of it. I don't quite know how. I think everybody else didn't want anything to do with it, didn't want the responsibility of seeing what I'd managed to do. And I like to think I've learnt from my mistake. But humiliating, as the editor of Boat Magazine, to have sunk the family heirloom.
It's just so easy, isn't it, to cock things up with boats.
It happens. We've all been, not necessarily there, but we've all done something. So come on, you must have something to confess, to get off your chest.
You're not allowed to fire me, by the way.
Well, I am, but probably not for this.
I'll mention in brief a couple of things that I'm not going to go into any greater depth with because I don't want to, completely undermine my credibility or get sued by anyone. So, in the Navy, we stopped in Palma, a lovely town.
Nice spot.
Yeah, just down
Famous
the road.
naval town.
just down the road is Magaluf.
Yes.
Yes. And
that sounds bad already.
Yeah, I, one way or another, was having a tremendous time, apparently with an enormous phallus connected to some glasses that were strapped to my hips like that. Yeah, I know. It's party glasses.
Right.
And I'd forgotten I had these on my head for much of the night. In any case, I was on HMS Ark Royal. It was fully loaded with 1,100 men.
That's
all
a
the
big
equipment.
one, isn't
it? Yeah, with...
aircraft carrier?
Yeah.
Quite a proper
Yeah,
ship.
it was the fleet flagship.
Yeah.
And it was waiting to leave. I didn't really understand that was more important than my beer at the time. And I delayed it substantially. And they wouldn't leave without me because I was simply not there. I was missing. Turned up in the
Missing
morning.
in action, literally.
Well, they just, they won't leave without you. So eventually I stumbled up the gangway, still with those glasses on my head, very late, and people were not pleased.
No.
The skipper gave me the mother of all bollockings. It was a masterclass. He insulted me at first, and then he went quiet, and I didn't know whether I was supposed to leave. He turned his back on me. It's kind of passive-aggressive. I didn't know whether, should I leave? Will he open up on the bollocking again, or should I stay and take a bit more? And I was kind of... But either way, I ended up cleaning the junior ratings toilets with a toothbrush for about 2 months.
So that does happen? That is a thing,
that genuinely happened. And let me tell you, it was good times in a way, because the junior ratings loved seeing an officer, albeit a junior one at the time, clean their toilets. And we got in quite tight, and I had a lot of good mates at the very... bottom end of that pyramid, so it was all good in a way. I also crashed a boat into a tree once. I'm not going to speak about that.
Hang on a minute.
No, we're not doing that.
Hang on a minute.
You and I can speak about that in the future. That was kind of my mistake. What it did teach me, though, I won't go into details, is that if you turn up on a day, any given day, and you're expected to skipper a boat, and you're not happy for any reason with any element of that boat and the way it's been presented to you, you as a skipper have got to have the nuts simply to say to him, I'm not taking anyone out today. I'm not using this boat. You're going to fix this, otherwise it's not happening, regardless of what you expected to do or the commitments you've made. Because as a skipper of a boat, absolutely the buck stops with you.
Yeah.
And if anyone gets hurt or damaged, if the boat gets destroyed, it's entirely your own fault. You can't blame other people because you've taken what you've taken it out.
Yeah.
You've just got to make sure the boat is as you would have it. So that was a big learning experience. But actually, on the job, since I joined Motorboat and Yachting, I went to Finland to try out that Quarken 27 cabin. It might have been a 35 cabin. It was the cabin version of the Quarken. And the guys there are just lovely. Martin's a top man. He was showing me around the boat, and I was doing my filming one-handed. I opened the wet bar, and I'm filming stuff, and then I've gone to close the wet bar to move on, because I was speaking, as I do at the time. And I haven't folded the tap back in properly. So under the main lid is a glass lid, and that pushed the tap down and compressed it as I was closing it and walking off with my camera. And I swear, the whole bloody thing, it just detonated.
The glass?
Yeah. It just exploded, and there were rubber bungs popping off hinges everywhere, and just glass everywhere, and it made a massive racket. It just exploded. It was that noise. And the first thing I did, I was quite embarrassed by it. I mean, it was just carnage, just wet. And you know how much things cost to replace in the marine industry.
Yeah.
First thing I did, I didn't carry on filming as I should have done as a complete professional. I simply looked around and thought, has anybody noticed? Can I just do one? Can I just disappear? Blame it on someone else? And then Martin comes strolling through to the side door, and in his brilliantly deadpan voice, as I'm sort of furtively looking about, says, what have you done to my boat? And I'm like, oh no.
What particular accent is that meant to be?
That is a Finnish accent.
Of course it is.
What have you done to my boat? No, I don't know what that was.
No.
Either way, it was so humiliating, and he spent about the next 3 hours on his hands and knees with a dustpan and brush
Sweeping
and a
up
Hoover,
little bits
just
of glass.
trying to get up the bits of glass.
Not good.
It cost him a good bit of
In
money in
bare
the long
feet,
run.
on glass
Yeah.
on boats, not a good combination.
So that's the cock up I'll tell you about.
Slightly similar one, actually. So when I first took on this job, I was working as the editor of a magazine called Motorboats Monthly. God rest her soul. Very good magazine.
Yeah, good magazine.
Anyway, we used to run these cruises in company. So readers would come along, they'd sign up to the cruise, we'd all go off on a lovely cruise. We were going across the channel to somewhere in northern France. Maybe it was the Channel Islands, actually. And a really lovely chap and a big supporter of the magazine came along in his Fleming 55. very new at the time, biggest boat on the cruise, lovely bit of kit, beautifully built, immaculate. He looked after it like an absolute gem.
Mm-hmm.
And he very sweetly invited us on board for a drink in the evening, because we were sort of leading the cruise, me and a couple of other guys, and he invited us on board for a drink. And I think we had supper on board. Somebody cooked a very lovely pasta supper, and he served us all a nice bottle of red wine. And I thought, what a charming guy. He couldn't be more generous. We had a beautiful meal, lovely chat, and we were just settling in to the saloon, beautiful cream leather sofa, not cream fabric sofas. Putting the glass to my lips, somebody cracked a joke just as I took a huge gulp of red wine, and I couldn't hold it in. I just sprayed the entire saloon, cream-coloured saloon of this immaculate, very expensive boat with thousands of droplets of red wine. And what can you do?
Mortified were
it was
you?
absolutely mortifying. He could not have been more charming about it. But God knows if that ever managed to get that off, or he had to replace every single cushion and sofa and carpet on the entire boat. But it was awful. I just wanted to disappear.
Yeah,
completely.
you want the ground to swallow you up, don't you?
Yeah. So that was pretty mortifying.
Yeah, that.
Nobody lost their lives, to be fair.
No.
But
still,
other than that, it was utterly humiliating.
It's one of those things, isn't it? As I think any right-thinking Englishman over the years would lose sleep. Like a decade later, you'd be waking up thinking, no, no.
Yeah. And I was new in the job. It was the first cruise I'd been on.
Oh, no.
Wanted to make a good impression. He was so generous with his boat and his time. And oh, dear. Everything about it was just deeply painful.
Yeah.
So I think you need to come up with something to top that.
All right. Well, look, basically, in the days before throttles were posh and you had cables, there's any number of times where I put on 4,000 RPM instead of like 800 when I'm just trying to gently manoeuvre around it. Yeah. And you're instantly at 20 knots and sharing people with and mounting pontoons.
But that does happen with those electronic throttles, isn't it? They often don't have much resistance.
Yeah. And I'm talking about where the cable suddenly is a bit sticky. And you give it a bit more, and all of a sudden the cable just, and you fly through to far more than you want. It's the modern ones. I can never find neutral for the most part.
Because there's barely any kind of detent or notch to you. It's so smooth. It's almost too easy, isn't it?
It is, but I'd say more embarrassing than most of that was, I went on that recent charter trip to Poland, to the Missouri region. What a brilliant time we had.
Yeah.
But the CEO gave me his Bayliner VR6 to have a play with. I think this is great because we've been cruising in the Northman 1200, having a brilliant time. Really nice place to go boating. That you should definitely check it out if you're looking for an alternative to the Mediterranean for you and your family. It's very affordable. But we were back in the floating lodge after doing the Northman stuff. We had this Bayliner VR6, so we'd take it out, to the restaurant. We'd take it out fishing. We'd take it out to the beach and stuff for a swim. And after the first time I tried to bring it back and park it up next to our floating lodge, I noticed, and the CEO had mentioned this, every time you come off the revs, as you're slowing down and lining yourself up, the engine will cut out.
Eh?
Yeah. I don't know what's going on with the boat.
Is that a new feature?
Yeah, it's not great. So the first time, I panicked a bit and I'm trying to get things sorted. It all went pear-shaped quite fast and we had fenders out and that was fine and I got a bit of help. But we were there for another 4 days and every time I was on the way back with the Bayliner, the various neighbours would sprint out with roving fenders because they saw me coming over the ice and I'm like, no, it's not me, it's the boat, for the love of God. So embarrassing. Like I needed this help from these people.
Yeah, oh dear, here comes the old magazine journalist. He has no idea what he's doing.
Yeah, I know. It was so humiliating. In the end, I just kind of stopped using it and moved on.
I had a boat a bit like that. I had a Sea Ray that with an outboard motor, Mercury 135, lovely 2-stroke V6.
Oh yeah,
fabulous noise.
Yeah,
but
lovely smell too.
Yeah, but there was a certain revs where it just wouldn't run. So you either had to be going sort of dead slow, or nail it and keep all the revs on. And for some reason, I could never get to the bottom of it. So it's fine for skiing or fast cruising. Wakeboarding, disaster, because it was just at that sort of revs, round about kind of 15 knots or something.
Yeah.
Never got to the bottom of it. Never knew what the problem was. live with it for years. It just becomes a quirk of the boat.
But yeah, a
very
quirk,
characterful.
Yeah, you don't mention that when you sell it on.
No. Funnily enough, I didn't mention that.
Yeah, I'm certain one of our viewers will know what the score is with these engines doing those strange things.
He probably bought it from me.
Yeah. Well, it's there's no end of potential stories that will embarrass us both. One thing I do remember is that I really cocked up. This is a long time ago. I was with a previous girlfriend. I picked up a rib from Lymington, and I was taking it round to Dover. So it's a right old trip, So I had the tank full up, and I had an extra couple of jerry cans because you don't trust fuel gauges on these things. So I've done a few calculations, allowed to do the job. So we'll go around. Yeah, we'll go around the south of the Isle of Wight from there. We'll take the slightly longer scenic route, and we'll enjoy it. It'll be fine.
Brave. The wrong side of the island.
Yeah, and as we're sort of getting towards Dungeness, and you know what seas are like off there. It's through the channel. It shallows a bit. It all kicks off. It's steep. It's really nasty and snotty. I don't like it out there. I'm thinking we're so low on fuel. We've got to be so low because actually that rib was running on its port tube a little, so we were dragging through the water a bit. So I'm thinking, right, I'll get one of these jerry cans. I'll try to fill up through the filler, which was on the foredeck, actually in the deck itself, and all I'd packed in my haste was a funnel. So I got this
siphon tube.
No, this dead weight of a canister and this little funnel in the deck like that, and I'm trying to fill it, and we're getting smashed about off Dungeness.
With the engine still running or not?
No, I turned that off briefly, but I'm getting concerned because I've got to be able to start this engine again because the seas were nasty and the coast wasn't too far away. We only got to get around the corner, to Dover. So it's a decent trip, but not a huge one. And after I tried this for a bit, the entire deck was soaked with fuel. You're slipping up on it, I know, and you're like, oh my God, just don't rush off. Get the right equipment before you leave.
Nobody light a fag in the meantime.
Yeah, that's right. I know. It was all bad. It turned out all right. We got in, but the missus at the time said, "You cocked that up, didn't you?" And I was like, "Yes, I did."
She noticed.
Yeah, she hadn't been blinded by my flannel.
Siphon tube, one of the best bits of kit ever to have on a boat. I've got one of those. I think it's called a super pump or something. There's a German guy who always used to sell it at the boat
shows. I saw him.
I've still got mine to this day. It's got a little marble in the sort of opening of the tube.
That's right.
That so when you push it down, it lets the fuel in. Pull it up, the marble slots into position, and you give it a little bit of a shake like that, and then it just gets the fuel high enough over the hump, and then pours straight in.
Yeah, you don't have to suck a tube, do you?
Every day. You don't have to suck a tube. Don't end up with a mouthful of petrol.
Yeah.
Don't spill any over the decks. And it means you can buy fuel cheaply and stick it in jerry cans and put it in your sports boat rather than having to pay all the money for a dockside fuel station.
Yeah, it's brilliant. You learn, don't you? But unless you've got another story, I've got one about a colleague of ours. He won't mind me telling. Simon Everett, lovely bloke, brilliant journalist. I've worked with him for decades. He was on the bow of a boat, and he was looking to drop the anchor, just so that we could have a bit of a play, maybe beach the boat, have just a relaxed sort of mooch about.
Sounds all right.
And
hard work in the office again. One of those.
He's one of these fellas. You know him well. If he has an idea, he'll commit to it. There's no ums and ahs. He's not black. He's not in the middle. He's just black or white. Let's do this. Let's not do this. He's very sort of potent and straightforward.
Decisive.
So he decided that the noise he could hear was our hull just nestling into some shale. So he's thinking, he's all right with that because he was just going to carry the bow anchor actually up the beach and just stick it on the beach and it'd be fine. We'll just keep hold of the boat that way. And so he hears this noise. And he's got the anchor in hand like this in his arms, and rather than turning around or chatting to anyone behind him, he just jumped off the bow with the anchor in hand. Yeah, it turned out we were in 40 feet of water and he just plummeted and the line was paying out like this off the bow. I was like, oh my God, we lost Simon. Oh, it was just
basically jumped over carrying a massive weight to carry him to the bottom.
Yeah, we just used a human anchor.
I've got one more story actually, which is worth telling, from a cousin of mine whose name I probably won't mention. But he wouldn't mind actually. Anyway, good friend of mine, but sort of mucker. We always used to hang out together when we were younger. He bought himself very flash little speedboat. I think it was called a Picton Sunsport.
Oh, yeah.
Little sort of 15, 16 foot.
Dave Picton, that Welsh brand, wasn't it?
Very quite cool looking thing.
Yeah.
Very shallow V though. We used to tease him about it, called it a lake boat because it was such a sort of shallow V.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're all a bit jealous of it because it looked quite cool and it was brand new, and I was still tooling around in my shitty old second-hand Fletcher Arrow Flash or something.
Yeah. Cool boat.
Yeah, well, it was all right, but it sort of grand's worth of boat, but did the job. Anyway, bought this cool boat. The one thing he didn't like about it was that the seats weren't quite supportive enough, not quite snug enough. They're a bit too flat. So he thought, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to buy myself a couple of bucket seats, fit them to the boat, job done, then I will have the perfect boat. Julie went ahead, did it, screwed him into the deck, job done. Takes it out the next day. Very quickly, the boat starts to go glug, 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 glug. You go, what is going on? This was absolutely perfect yesterday. Pulls the boat out on the trailer. You guessed it. He'd screwed them right through the floor, through the hull, and out the other side. So he basically put about 24 holes in the bottom of his boat. But he had two lovely seats.
What a magic move.
It was a great move.
Oh, I'm
Poor
so
bloke,
pleased.
he's never lived it down.
What was his name?
I couldn't possibly say.
Oh, it's a shame.
He's just known as Marky Boy to us.
Marky Boy.
He'll know it. He tells the story himself. It was a classic moment.
What a genius. Marky
Just
Boy,
to see
I love you. He's
all
made
these
me
little
feel better
screws
about
sticking
himself.
out the bottom of the boat.
What a complete legend.
Great job.
Well, I think we should stop there before we
I
really
think we
do
probably-
destroy our credibility. What do you think?
I think that's probably a very wise idea.
If you've got any stories about boating failures, we'd dearly love to hear from you about what went on. And if you've enjoyed our podcast, you want to see more of the same, please do subscribe to the Motor Boat and Yachting channel, because we'll be doing plenty more of these.
Absolutely. More podcasts, more boat tours, more boat tests.
It's all good. See you for podcast number 6.
Great stuff. Thank you for watching. We'll see you on the next one.